Hi everyone, I'm author Elizabeth Ann West. Does anyone remember the very first write-a-thon I did where I tried to write 50,000 words in a weekend with The Gentleman Is Mine? I'm going to resurrect those components and reuse them, which is actually going to be a good thing because it's going to show you guys how to set up your end slots.
Before we begin, let me caution you, this is an advanced lab. I'll be going fast. So, for a full understanding, you must have some knowledge of AI, the Notion app, and of our very own and ever evolving Rexy app.
All right, let's do a new chat. Write for me a funny comedic outline that is a new variation of Pride and Prejudice, where at Netherfield Park, while Jane Bennet is recuperating, Elizabeth Bennet overhears Caroline Bingley telling her sister that Mr. Darcy would never fall for the charms of Elizabeth. This eavesdropping makes Elizabeth angry, as Caroline has slighted her and Jane for the last 2 days while Jane was sick with a fever. This makes Elizabeth Bennet decide to pursue and show interest in Mr. Darcy as a folly against Miss Bingley's advances on Mr. Darcy. Scenes at Netherfield Park should be comedic and humorous as Caroline Bingley tries to get Mr. Darcy's attention, but Elizabeth actually gives attention to Mr. Darcy, who has fallen for Elizabeth. As Jane gets better and talks to Mr. Bingley before the Bennet sisters leave Netherfield Park, Mr. Bingley asks for a courtship with Jane, and Mr. Darcy asks for a courtship with Elizabeth on a double walk in the garden. Not wanting to hurt her sister's chances with Mr. Bingley and slightly shocked at how handsome Mr. Darcy is in the moment, Elizabeth Bennet accepts and immediately regrets that she let her small folly go too far. The story continues at Longbourn with the arrival of Mr. Collins, but the story changes because now Elizabeth and Jane are spoken for, and so Mr. Collins instead is focused on Mary. Add in conflict here, more comedic situations. You can use Lady Catherine de Bourgh and Mr. Wickham as sources of conflict, but the original storyline must change to where this story finishes with a double wedding of Jane and Mr. Bingley and Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy in the early spring of 1812. And let me go ahead and copy this prompt because I don't want to lose it just in case. So let's see what it does. Okay, so it's doing acts. Okay, this is actually a good idea. So if it has these acts, then I can actually change these acts and then say, hey, break these acts down into individual scenes. So we'll do a page, act outline. Gentleman is mine. And now I'm over here and I'm validating.
What is human validation? Validation involves me, as the senior writer, carefully reviewing and refining the content generated by the AI. It's a dynamic process where I make adjustments, express preferences, and suggest enhancements based on my judgment.
I'm going to change this. Elizabeth remains her intelligent and witty self, but instead of reading books and ignoring the Netherfield Park inhabitants, she asks Mr. Darcy if he plays chess.
The timeline for this collaborative effort is flexible, ranging from a quick few minutes to more extensive periods spanning hours or even days.
So yeah, that's going to be perfect. Let me just grab this first part and see if it can just write a whole scene list for just that part. I'm going to come over to Rexy and I'll paste this in.
ChatGPT gave me a 4-act outline. I'm using Rexy to extract from that outline a scene list just for acts 1 and 2.
Please read the novel information below. I need a detailed scene list for the first 2 acts. Please label each scene, scene 1 and scene 1, etc., and include as much information as possible, such as setting, characters, motivations, and plot events. Please include scenes that are not specifically mentioned above, but would connect the story from scene to scene. For example, there should be a scene in Act 1 and in Act 2 where Darcy and Mr. Bingley talk about their intentions towards the Bennet sisters, perhaps playing billiards or out on a ride in Act 1 while the weather is nicer. You can invent scenes that serve the story plot, but make sure they are period appropriate to 1811. Your final scene count should be more than 10. Just plain Jane instructing it what I want it to do, GPT 4.7, and we'll go ahead and click Let's Bang. So there's scene 1 and it's doing the sick room and it's doing the characters and it's doing the plot. Angry and determined. Okay, so I think we got some good stuff here. 10 scenes times 2,000 per scene, 15,000 to 20,000 words just for Act 1 and Act 2. That should already have written to the auto write, which it did down here. This is the outline for Act 1 and Act 2.
Now that I have my scene list, the next step is to create the other Notion pages necessary to generate my scene writing briefs.
This is by far, I think, one of the best methodologies for writing with artificial intelligence. So this methodology that I'm about to do, it is going to make an individual document for each scene. That document will be about 400 to 700 words. So basically, it's going to be able to read the information that's in these 5 documents for me, and it's going to extract out information for a scene brief. So looking at my handy dandy cheat sheet that I always have, my scene list should be N7. So I'm going to paste in my scene list, which is right there. This is scene outline, Act 1 and 2. N1 is always a genre, a variation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice fan fiction, written for modern readers, but takes place in 1811. I always like to put everything in Tupperware boxes on the actual Notion page so that when it pulls it into Rexy, it always has context. N2 is supposed to be my characters. I don't have that yet. Setting, I don't have that yet. Story world, writing style. None of that stuff. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to come over to Rexy and I'm going to create those things from my scene list that I have already. So I'll just come over to prompter. You read a scene list and extract the information an author asks for. Read this scene list for the first act of a novel. And I'll put the scene list in. Please give me a detailed list of the characters, including side characters, such as servants, needed to write these scenes with vivid details and rich dialogue. For all major characters, give full explanations of their story, goal, and motivations, sample dialogue, knowing this is a romance, and eventually Mr. Darcy will marry Elizabeth and Mr. Bingley will marry Jane. So I'm just telling it a little bit so it doesn't try to make it a drama. Include rules of custom of the time, such as Miss Bennet is Jane and Elizabeth Bennet is addressed as Miss Elizabeth, and process so I can get that detailed character list now. Okay, cool. I like it. Now it is written to my auto write. We have it right here. So I'm actually going to rename this. I'm going to call this Characters Act 1. I'm going to throw it into the pre-writing. And since Characters is supposed to be N2, I will go ahead and delete my N2 and drag this up because it goes there. And then I will put this into Tupperware container. And then what I also like to do is put each character in a Tupperware container if I want it to be nice and clear. For setting, why don't we use the Notion AI for a second? So press space for AI, so I've got it. I need setting descriptions for a Regency estate that would be Netherfield Park in 1811. I need descriptions of a guest room for a sick Jane Bennet, a drawing room with a piano forte, the library, dining room, and halls. All right, so now it's just going to go ahead and write me those settings. Listen, I love AI. It's really a handy tool. I can look at these and decide what I want. Do I want Marble Force? Sure. All right, I need to do a writing style. The best thing to do is for have it to analyze my human writing, but I'm just going to ask the AI to come up with a style. Write out a writing style guide for a novel of Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice, variation fan fiction that's for modern readers, but takes place in 1811. All right. Perfect. We're gonna go ahead and put this in writing style and then close the Tupperware container. You go to your elements page. I need to bring in my end slots. So I have my Notions 21 pre-writing. So I'll bring that in and I will paste that right there. Boop. Press enter to apply, and then you just have to click load.
The Notion pages needed are all done. Now we can set up our Rexy sequencer, the 21 Blackjack.
These are basically sequences of prompts that can run over and over and over again. Each one, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, has 2 parts, a top and a bottom. Read the following story information for the purposes of planning a writing brief for scene 1. And then it says, now write a detailed scene 1 writing brief. Please tag this. So it's going to read the Notion slots, and then it's going to write this detailed scene brief for each one. I also went ahead and told it to skip the Big Bang box on each one of those 10. Now we're finally ready to get some scene briefs. And I'm going to go let's bang. And now I'm over here and I'm validating, making tweaks to the scene writing brief.
The scene writing briefs contain all the necessary information for the AI to finally write the scene.
So here's how this works. I'm going to grab these and I'm literally going to drag them up into my pre-writing. Let me move them right here so they're between 11. There we go. And so now to run this, all I'm going to do is refresh my Notion slots, and they're right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
N9 is the writing prompt for the AI. And to make that,
I'm going to grab the writing style and bring that into my N9. So I'm going to paste in the writing style. Write the scene in the writing style following the scene writing brief. Please tag the scene you write as scene X draft at the beginning and scene X draft at the end, where X is the scene number the writing brief has. And then all I gotta do is my B slots. I'm not writing scene briefs anymore. Now I'm writing scenes. So I just load that blackjack instead. Da 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 da. Now I'm just going to use Claude. I'm gonna do 2.1. I'm going to see what happens here. And we're going to bring the temperature down to 0.5. So it really has to listen. I want to see what it can do. I haven't played with 2.1 in a while, and I'm wondering if since we have a plan now, it will do it. So it has all the information here. And let's go with 1 and start banging at 1. Let's just do 1 and see if 2.1 can do it. We're living dangerously low. Oh, it's doing it.
The golden light of the afternoon sun filtered softly through the windows of the Netherfield sick room, casting a warm glow on the pale face of Jane Bennet as she rested peacefully amidst the fine linens and plush pillows of the stately bed. Her breathing deep and steady in slumber. The only signs of her enduring illness were the heightened spots of colour on her cheeks. Elizabeth sat vigilantly at her sister's bedside, a small, relieved smile touching her own countenance as she observed the comforts now surrounding Jane. Their arrival 2 nights prior had been a harrowing one, with Jane soaked through to the bone and trembling violently with feverish chills. But thanks to the hospitality of Mr. Bingley and his sisters, she now seemed to be on the mend.
Okay, I was able to accomplish about 6,000 to 7,000 of rough draft. I have 7,000 words of the first 6 scenes in one format, 6,000 of them in another format when I put them together. Once I finish it up, I think those first 6 scenes are going to be about 10,000 words. I'll keep you posted. Have a great writing weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday.